Thank you for joining Analytics Today, a podcast series that focuses on big data and analytics and the latest trends in the digital world. I'm your co-host, Jeremy Roberts, and with me always is Samir Khan. Hey, Samir, how you doing?
Hey, Jeremy, how are you?
Happy almost Halloween. You know what's funny is like we talk about this every year. It is October, and it seems like the store skipped Halloween and went straight for Christmas. So I walked into the store and I was looking for some Halloween decorations, like, oh my gosh, they're gone. And they had all this Christmas stuff. I'm like, eventually they're going to start putting up Christmas stuff in July. And then next it's going to be June. And then it's just going to have a section year round, right? It's just ridiculous. So,
Yeah, it's very interesting, like how things are becoming even more commercialized every year,
oh my gosh.
which is in a way good for kids. I mean, they can shop around for Christmas right now.
Exactly.
They don't
So
have to worry till
today,
like last minute.
exactly. So today we're excited again. Happy to be back in the podcast. We have a guest today. We have a guest hailing all the way from Germany. And so he is actually out of Greater Munich, or they would call Greater München. And so it's Alexander Walden. We'll call him Alex today. So let me see if I have your quick bio. Alex, welcome to the show.
Thank
Um,
you. Thanks for having
yeah,
me.
so, Alex, experienced transformation and technology executive with a demonstrated history of working in and selling to the information technology and services industry, transformative IT leader, skilled in cloud end user computing, enterprise software, IT strategy and processing, team management, professional services, driving digital transformation, lifelong learning and innovation is his passion. In recent years, predominantly using agile methodologies. This is like you have like the buzzword of buzzwords bio. I mean, man, it's almost thinking, what have you not done in your life, right, Alex? So let's start off with that. Talk about
What
you. Before we get into your company, you are the CEO of, and let me make sure I get the pronunciation correctly, Ververica.
Ververica, correct.
Ververica, and we'll get into the name and what it means. But let's
hmm
start off. Actually, you know what? Let's start off quick by saying, what is Ververica and what is your role there? And let's start with that first, and then we'll get into some other questions.
So Ververica is a company that was once founded as Data Artisans, but we go by Ververica now, and we go into the reasons maybe a bit later. But it's about data stream processing for the enterprises. The original founders of the company, which is almost 10 years ago, were some smart students from a university in Berlin.
Mm-hmm.
They created this stream processing framework, which fortunately finally seems to be picking up on speed in the industry for data processing. So when I went to uni some, I don't know, 20 years ago, we still call it data warehousing. Then it became business
Mm-hmm.
intelligence. Now it's the next thing, but I think we'll touch on that. But you touched on the buzzwordiness of that tagline.
Yes.
I think that's from my LinkedIn
Yes.
profile. I think I used it to get jobs, and um, there's a website which, when I went to uni 20 years ago, was introduced to me as bullshitbingo.net. I think it now goes by
Love it.
buzzwordbingo.net. Get inspiration there, and that's how you generate it. Some parts of it are true, some of it are less true now because I left it behind, but that's all stuff I've done in my life.
I love it. And I think, the thing is that, with my current career and Samir's and yours, I mean, a lot of these, we have a lot of the same buzzwords. So, both of us are involved in digital transformation. Both of us are involved also in cloud and transformative IT. So this is going to be an exciting talk today. But before we get into that, I got to ask you about your background. And
hmm
what we always love to talk about is your journey, right? So we're going to start with, and Alex, this is where you put on your time machine. Go back to the first terrible job that you used to have. And I always give the example where in the US, we talk about, I was a team leader at McDonald's, right? Or I was working, like for me personally, mine was working in a warehouse. And this warehouse had no forklifts or technologies. It was just heavy boxes that we had to carry up on a ladder. And it was soccer uniforms. So I remember 300 pairs of soccer socks weighs 80 pounds in a
hmm
box. And I know that. So I had to carry boxes. Samir had terrible jobs, dude. We've all had terrible jobs. So tell us what was your first job, and just give us kind of a quick summary of how you got into this, because most people don't start in IT. They start in other really random stuff. Like some people work at the Gap, and then they realize I had a terrible manager who told me everything that I didn't want to do in my career, and I got here. So you're on, go for it.
Yeah, it's pretty spot on. So mine was an internship that my father organized for me at a company named KPMG.
Huh,
You may know
okay.
it. And yeah, I was
That's
fortunate
not
enough.
terrible at all.
No, but the thing was, I'm a single child, and I think my parents always knew what was best for me before I even knew it. And at some point, we had that sort of saying that I can do whatever it is as long as it is what they want me to do.
Yeah.
So they've asked me to do this internship at KPMG, which was really insightful because the guy took me into some legal things. I had to work on some legal documents, and it kind of triggered me to decide to study law after finishing high school in '93. So a long, long, long time ago. But not immediately, but a year and a bit later, it showed me this whole legal thing wasn't for me because it started changing my personality. And
Nice.
I did discover my own little personality, which again took me a bit longer to identify that I wasn't the typical German. Um, and I said it finished school in '93. I went to Australia in 2001, and that was a good job, even though it sounds funny. I became a scuba diving instructor for a year.
Very
And
cool.
that helped me to clear up my mind and actually
Nice.
decide on what I then wanted to do. And then I went back to uni, and then I was motivated. I did it successfully, and I'm a Bachelor of Business, MBA, and Master of IT, all in 4.5 years. So
Nice.
your life is not straight for me. And I've been in similar situations where people said, like, yeah, you're not getting the job, is not a straight CV. Now that I'm fortunately in a position where I can hire people, I tend to also look at those which are not super straight because I find them
Yes.
more interesting. They have more stories to tell.
Yes.
And I'm not super interested in straight. It's like, tell me things you've learned, because all of the not so happy things I got, the question was your worst job in life.
Yeah.
We learn from failures, and then it is what we do with it to turn it into something great or
So
successful.
was there a
So
manager that steered you so wrong that you're saying I cannot do this, or was that, or is it just like many moments? Because for me it was like a bunch of moments where I was like, I'm not doing this. I can't do this.
I mean, he didn't manage me in a way that I have to be like that, but I realized I have a hard time blending into 99 other people wearing suits and ties, and I'll just become number 100.
Yeah.
I've
Yeah.
noticed about myself that I'm the guy rather at front
Hmm.
than blending in. And if that's
I
your
like that.
personality, you better not pick a job where you chop potatoes at McDonald's. I mean, okay, they come pre-chopped. So let's pick
Yeah.
tomatoes. And then you get promoted to washing salad the next week. That may
Well,
not
this is
be
fantastic
who I am.
because at the end of the podcast, we're actually going to come back and ask you questions about giving advice to
Oh,
our
okay.
young people. You know what I mean? Because what Samir and I do, and I'm sure you do too, is we mentor a lot of younger people trying to come up in their careers, and they have all this ambition and all these crazy things. And I want to be perfect when I get into my first job. I'm like, you're not going to be perfect. You're going to be very flawed, but that's a good thing as long as you can learn.
Absolutely.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
So
no, I think
Samir,
it's very
yeah,
interesting, right? So I was gonna say, going back to your response, Alex, and the question that you're asking, kind of cheating a little bit now, then from the journey going from this first job that doesn't necessarily matches your personality, and you want to go from there to becoming what you are, which is the CEO of Ververica, a company that provides enterprise solution for stream processing and stream analytics. Um, how Tell me more about the main challenges that you're experiencing as a CEO of this company, and how do you
Mm,
overcome them? What is your mindset, the learnings that you got from all the experiences?
I'd say the basic wisdom and all of that, the grass isn't greener elsewhere. And let me explain what I mean by that. So I ended up with Ververica a year before I was asked to become the managing director. So externally, and I guess for the American market, we use CEO. Internally, I'm joking, I'm the chief entertainment officer. But even in that joke, there's a lot of truth because I have to make sure that the people that we have working for us get our vision, understand where we're going to. And coming back to this intro that you read from LinkedIn about transformation, it's a journey. It's a company that was founded almost 10 years ago, started off as a small project, incubating, open source, very altruistic, found out they needed to make money to pay the people's salaries, became a bit bigger, got acquired by a large company, Alibaba Cloud. It's not always easy to understand what it is that you're doing next. And we still have people from 4 or 5 years ago thinking, yeah, they're working at the old Ververica. And no disrespect to them, I have to take them on a journey and show them where we're going. And I think my job really right now is about being a tour guide. It's not losing the people who are important, taking them on a journey to achieve what we've set out to be as a company. And obviously that also defines the difficulties that I'm having. Not everyone wants to, not everyone gets it. There's 18 different versions of the truth. If I speak to 15 people, it's about repeating it, etc. And that's stuff I've learned in my not so straight CV by going all into these different jobs. You can run with fun, you can run with fear, you can do whatever management theory you learn at uni. In the end, it's about the people that you need to take along that journey. And any of the transformation I've experienced as a victim or as somebody who's being transformed or now being a transformer myself has been about the right people around you, behind you, and around and everywhere. So
interesting.
It's a lot of time that you need to invest
yeah.
into people singing your song. It's also hiring the right people who
what's interesting
believe in that. So yeah.
Is it I remember, I don't remember a ton of quotes, but there's a few quotes that I actually remember. And one of them was powerful to me. And it was a simplified quote, and it was about management. And there's a guy in the United States, his name is Lee Iacocca. And so if a lot of people don't remember who he was in that movie, featured in that movie, Ford versus Ferrari, if you ever remember that fantastic movie.
Yeah,
right?
One of the SVPs of Ford, right?
Yeah, he was the guy who worked for Henry Ford II. And he was the one who approached Carroll Shelby to ask him to create a race car. And, he has this famous quote about management. And he says that management is the ability to motivate people. That's it, period. Management is the ability to motivate people. And I'm sitting there thinking, a lot of, Alex, what you're talking about is like you're a motivator, you're a storyteller, you're a mediator, you're an intermediary, you play so many roles and so many hats as a CEO. The fact that you have that crazy CV non-linear trajectory to get from where you were to where you are now, I think from Samir's and I's experience, the best CEOs out there are the ones who come from that, who understand it's not all perfect, and you have to be everything to everybody, right?
Yeah, I don't disagree. But the everything to everyone comes with a small caveat. You still have to be true to yourself so that when you go to bed at nighttime, you don't feel like you have done something wrong and that you still
like that
can look in the mirror. You mentioned interesting term, managers. Some of it is also leading, and then managing becomes actually the easy part, where it's like, I want you to do this, I want you to do that. But leading by example, standing there, being beaten up maybe once or twice in front of other people also may help them to feel like, okay, he's taking the beating now. And it's coming back to the grass isn't always greener. So previously I worked at a large German company, which had a workers' council. Now I work indirectly for an Asian company where HR has a completely different role culturally. What I'm trying to say is there's always that one area in every company that I've ever worked with, even the American companies, where it's not so easy. And they shouldn't be disillusioned or disgruntled because there's that one kid that you didn't like. It's just life. So kind of move on with it, go with the flow, continue the journey, and keep convincing people. Because what I've also learned is if I couldn't convince some people, then maybe my story wasn't right. So I have to tweak my story, adjust it. And that's also where, especially for us, I mean, yeah, Ververica, I'm one of 3 German-born people in the company. There's another 72 who are international. And some work in Germany, some work in other countries.
Very diverse.
So the one thing you learn very quickly is there's no common sense from a cultural perspective. And yeah, we all speak English because it is the one thing that unites us, but we all speak a different English. So you also have to be cautious there, how you say things, etc., etc. So it's you never go back to what you've learned in school or whatever. Always be open, continue your own journey, and then life is interesting.
Nice. Well, let's do a little brain twist here. And Samir, if you want to go, let's talk about some of the product too. Let's talk about the company a little bit.
Yeah, I'm very fascinated. We spend a lot of time looking at your websites and trying to understand from a product standpoint, where does Ververica fit with everything that's going on in the database and the cloud space and data storage and capacity, and especially in the streaming area. So I'm going to ask you a 2-part question, right? So first, we're going to talk a little bit more about you explaining us what are the true benefits of Ververica? Like, why would I go with Ververica versus other real-time data processing providers and cloud services? And then the second part of the question is if you can share some of the very interesting and exciting use cases and customer stories that you have seen at Ververica.
Sure. Because you mentioned the website. So the website still is written with a developer in focus as a target audience. So it's very tech heavy. Like, here's a feature, don't you get it? I think going forward in data stream processing, and it's maybe a long-winded answer to your simple question, is for us it started off as an open source framework that we needed to make famous. That happened, the company got acquired. There is certain things happening in the industry with other major players also doing things in Flink, etc., etc. So we fundamentally now see that enterprise stream processing or event stream processing, or however you want to call it, depending on whether you read Gartner or Forrester, is a technology to stay. What we also notice is that not everyone has yet understood what they can do with it. And I think that's where Ververica comes into play.
Yeah, that's big.
Is a hipster cool techie may develop something with open source because it's free and just use it. As soon as it becomes enterprise and has to deliver value in the company and becomes a bit more of a bigger investment, then we've noticed companies looking at buying support. Now, that was our last 3 years. And the next years, I see more as a make versus buy decision. And we want to be in that buy decision. So our proposition to our clients is that we make it easier to implement Flink. We make it easier to use event stream processing. And going forward, we'll make it so easy that we probably don't even have to mention Apache Flink anymore. It's about, here's an app, data in, data out, and this is what it can do for you.
I like that. So I'm looking at it, and you have all the key buzzwords there: turnkey solutions, cloud, on-prem. Yeah, it's so the thing is, so Samir and I's first jaunt into the tech world was at Rackspace. Both of us were old school Rackspace managed servers, dedicated servers, OpenStack, cloud. That was us. We were there since 2008. And so
so you were wreckers.
Old school wreckers, yeah. And
old school wreckers.
And we were in the marketing department, so we were the ones trying to figure out how to communicate the ease of use. And so, we've had our jaunts to the IBM and Adobe's of the world, and digital transformation and all this other stuff. But this is fascinating stuff. I mean, for me, I know Samir and I, we've had that conversations all the time about buy versus build. And I remember going to one of the companies that Samir had represented before in the past about, buy versus build. And I remember going to talk to his company and saying, hey, don't you guys want to buy our software? This software is fantastic. And like, well, no, we've been trying to build it ourselves for a long time. Well, how long has that taken you? It's taken us a few years. Well, how much have you invested in it? Well, a few $1,000,000. Oh, okay. So what kind of technical debt do you have? And they start going down the list of all the technical debt. And they say, well, we've gotten so deep in our technical debt, it's going to cost us $2 million to change it to a cloud infrastructure. Oh, okay. So, you know what I mean? I think it's interesting.
It's in a previous role, I went to a CIO of a bank here in Germany, and we talked about getting rid of his mainframe. And he said it's probably easier to start a new bank and wait for the customers to die. So, yeah, technical debt is kind of something that you always want to get rid of, but never have time for.
No.
Never.
But the thing about Rackspace, because you mentioned it, they had one keyword, fanatical support.
Fanatical support, yeah.
And it became the trademark. And because we said like OpenStack and everything, and I remember OpenStack on-prem was like 4 racks of service just for the management thing in order to have 1 rack of service for the workloads. People still dug into it because by then Rackspace was cool. Yeah. I'm not saying it's uncool now, but it's people buy from people for something they believe in. And
we drank the Kool-Aid. We were there. We
drank the Kool-Aid. Yes. And it's I don't know. My wife likes Instagram. She has all of these people she follows for stuff to wear. I just go and buy whatever, a typical same blue, gray jumper every year after year.
Yeah.
But the point I'm trying to make is in a not just transforming the company, but in a also transforming industry that we exist in, we have to change our language. So don't learn our website by heart. There's going to be new content soon. And then it's us leading the change or going with the change. It depends on how you look at it. For different things, we may lead it. For others, we may follow it. But the picture I'm always drawing is this whole industry is like the Pacific Ocean. And just because I'm sitting on the beach in, let's say, California, I'm not occupying anyone else's space in Australia or anywhere else on the Pacific Ocean. It's big enough. The one thing we should avoid, and pardon that figure of speech, is that we pollute it so that it becomes unusable. But it's so big. And you had a second part to your question, like what sets us apart from the others. So our products are more on-premise, self-installed, self-managed at the moment. And pretty soon we'll be releasing a new feature update to a fully managed cloud version. But the one thing we fundamentally believe in is we want to give customers choice. How you want to run it, where you want to run it, it's not my decision. I've seen so many clients in my past who, for the same reasons, have taken opposite decisions. I go private cloud, I go public cloud. And you know what? Go knock yourself out. I'll give you a piece of software that runs anyway.
Yeah.
I think the English say horses for courses. So it's my belief that I'm not God, Jesus, anything of that type where I have to say, you have to use public cloud, otherwise you have sinned. No, go knock yourself out and start developing in public cloud, and I'll give you something that's equal in private cloud so you can run it afterwards. So we have these stages of technology adoption. And that was one thing I wanted to come back to. Sorry for going on here.
Sure.
I think there was some research, the 5 stages of technology adoption, pretty old, 60s, 70s type thing, but it talks about 5 phases. And I think we can see ourselves having completed the first phase, in the second phase now, going from open source to open core. And some other people call it crossing the chasm. Because when you start from a small sort of company with a bit of a hobbyist, altruistic approach into becoming an evil, a commercial company. And evil in inverted commas, but it's about having... Well, I have to pay my staff salary and obviously also the company who invested in us by buying the full thing
Exactly.
wants some return on investment. So let's be realistic. Even if it's open source, there's some kind of commercial interest in it.
Well, okay,
Mhm.
well, think on that note, where do you see stream processing, streaming analytics going in the next 5 years? Like, where do you, what are the trends that are telling you it's going to a certain direction?
So what I'm seeing in smaller companies who want to be cool, they have to do it because it enables their business, doing real time or near real time decision making.
It activates their capabilities, basically.
It activates their capabilities. And smaller companies are a bit more innovative sometimes because they don't have that legacy or that
Mhm.
luggage behind them. However, the money is often very made with the big ones. And picking example, banks, for example. Here in Europe, we have this real-time money transfer thing now. Because the old traditional banks, it took them 24, 48 hours to transfer money from one account to another. But because of EU directives, it had to happen in real time. So some banks use Apache Flink or our version of it to enable that, because you need to have not just a transaction, but there's security checking, a lot of things that need to happen with that data before it can actually transact. And stuff like that either comes from directives from above or comes from smaller companies below. And what I'm seeing is a lot of big companies are kind of stuck in the 80s or 90s in their data warehousing, business intelligence approach, where I'm looking
Many
at
of them.
yesterday's data, I get
Yeah.
a report, and I, as a human, take a decision. And then you think about 99% of those you can probably automate with some form of, let me call it artificial intelligence, because it is the term we use right now. Um, Whether it's intelligent or not, that's another subject for a
Well,
philosophy podcast. But it's it has to go that way where we offload things to machines, if we like it or not, to make
yeah.
decisions. And I think that's where stream processing comes in, because it's enabling that.
Well, I completely agree. I think in my, as a consultant, speaking to hundreds of different companies a year, I've identified that the largest, most mature, most profitable companies are the ones who are suffering from using legacy, outdated, archaic technologies the most. They're the ones who, like, somewhere in a conversation, somebody's talking about, we're talking about queries and building out segmentation models to be able to run real-time processing for personalization or something. And then the word Excel comes up. And I'm sitting there thinking, wait, hold on, go back to what you said. Did you just say Excel? And they're like, oh yeah, so we take this and we download it and we put it into an Excel spreadsheet and then we email the spreadsheet over to somebody. And I'm sitting there thinking, oh my gosh, why why are you
But that's the way
downloading?
we've always done things around here.
We've always done it this way, or no, I mean,
Yeah.
it's funny, and it's the most mature companies, it's the most profitable companies with the best stock, and it's scary how archaic they are.
But it's people like security, safety, conservatism, call it whatever you want, but stability. And I think that's why these companies have these share prices, because they have customers more old-fashioned than they are buying from them. Hence it
And they
works.
don't understand it, so they like the way things used to be. Yeah. So Samir and I, we know what you're talking about. Even a company you've worked for, Samir, I remember talking to them saying, why are you doing it this way? Oh, we've always done it this way. Good job. And I secretly give them a thumbs up, and I'm dying inside.
Because we can.
Yeah, no,
Yeah.
I think what was Alex was saying exactly to your point, Jeremy, right? I think the what Excel, and I don't want to go too much into the rat hole, but what it offers is that I can trust it, right? It's on my computer, I can open it, I see the data, it's me who can touch it, and I feel that security. So going back to the idea of, like, I was reading some of the details of their Ververica on the security side, on the fraud prevention side.
Mhm.
What kind of use cases do you typically come up with Alex, where the clients, like, let's talk about one of the most unusual use case you came across and where Ververica was used in that situation.
unusual use case. It was actually one where a customer had batch data that they wanted to stream process for reporting purposes. It's kind of like, I don't know, peeling an avocado in order to shrink wrap it so that you can sell it in a more convenient way. That's just odd. I mean, the whole thing comes with a skin around it that protects it, so you don't need to put one. So it's like when you don't get what stream processing is, then you start just putting it in because some C-level asked you to do some hip, cool thing. And you mentioned digitization, digital transformation earlier. I think it's a lot in there where in order to make stream processing work and get you, pardon my expression here, the most bang for your buck is you rethink things and go back to start to see how you can really make use of it. Otherwise, it's just another cool thing. But you mentioned security things, fraud detection. Yeah, I think that is an almost overstated use case. Everyone is using that one. You swipe your credit card, things are checked, how it's done, etc.
Yeah.
I can tell you another one. They're not a client of ours, but they talk about it publicly. Uber. You pop out your mobile, you call one, it calculates the price. Small thing we noticed, I have a pretty expensive phone. My colleague had a pretty cheap phone. His ride was cheaper than mine to the same place. So always get a colleague with a cheap phone to call you an Uber. But it's running on open source Apache Flink, as far as I know. And
is that a true use case that actually you call from a cheap phone and you get less price?
Well, it happened to our office manager and me standing next to each other, going to a department store.
Now on his computer is going to be ordering the cheapest phone possible.
Well, I use it a lot, where I'm traveling for business, and so I'm like, okay, well, it's a good use case.
I'm not saying it's representative, and certainly please Uber people don't sue me or hate me or shoot me when you see me in a couple of weeks. But
he's going to try it. Don't worry, he's going to try it.
It's rumored to be the case for many, many, many companies that they have different pricing based on devices or geographies. I think purchasing power is exactly. Plane tickets. It's purchasing power.
Location, geography that I have heard. Yeah, I agree with you. Yeah.
But
that's very interesting, though.
But plane tickets, I mean, it's a finite number of seats, and obviously the last 10 are more expensive than the first 10. It's just something we've come to accept.
Exactly.
But it's, security use cases. We have a few where, I don't know, your login behavior, is your credit card and your IP matching to what you're booking, let's say you're booking hotel rooms. I've seen such things. IoT, where monitoring your plant's behavior. Oops, I'm running low on paint for my next car. Maybe I get some red paint delivered to that place, etc., etc. Just the overall improvement of things, where in the past with batch processing, maybe we've done it overnight. Yeah, let me look at what I need to order for tomorrow. Now into more of an automated thing. And we touched on McDonald's earlier. If they run low on fries, get some more fries in from somewhere and maybe have the fridge order it automatically. That logic needs to be implemented somewhere.
I agree.
And that is, I guess, the app logic that you can run on things like Apache Flink.
Well, let's go back into one more question about kind of the community and open source and stuff. And then we'll kind of follow up with one or two final questions. But so, we talked about this, Samir and I were talking about this earlier. We mentioned you, like, what is the balance between innovation and really that contribution to the open source community of Apache Flink? With commercial interests, you have the goals of your company and Alibaba Group and all that stuff. So how do you really balance that innovation versus a contribution?
I think I gave part of the answer with these 5 stages of technology adoption. So when you are putting out an open source framework and you want it to stay, the people who founded the company, I think, didn't do much market research, because whatever they would have gotten from the market would have been like, I don't know what you're doing. So they had a vision, they've just implemented it, they put it out there. And in that case, I guess you put out a lot of features which people may not need or may not use, but others would love. It's part of innovation. You cannot ask anyone how cool your product is until they've really tested it. I mean, when I got my first iPhone, I was like, what? Apps? Who's going to use it? Now it's all I'm using on that bloody device.
Mhm.
So in that phase, you cannot really ask too many people. You just have to do it. Then as we matured and as Apache Flink matured and as more companies get involved into it, so it's not just us or Alibaba, it's VMware, Apple, Cloudera, Confluent, yeah, plenty of others participating in it. LinkedIn, for example. It becomes cool, hip, and you want to be part of it. Still, you put features into the open source thing. Then customers come to you and say, hey, I would need an enterprise feature. I would need maybe some support. How can we do encryption? Things that the people doing the open source bit maybe haven't looked at or weren't important for the sake of the product, but are important for the sake of operating it or securing it. Disaster recovery. Not really what a developer thinks about, but what a CFO, CTO, whatever may think about. So that's where you see open source probably become a bit more hybrid, let me call it that way. And you start wrapping enterprise features around it. And then obviously at some point, you see these 10x messages. I'm 10 times faster than I'm 5 times more, and I'm fully compatible, la, 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 la. And when you have these things coming, then it's, say I have 10 features, I put 5 in open source because it's cool. And the other 5 I keep to myself. And I think everyone does it. It's not just us, to have a compelling commercial offer. And often it might be user experience, ease of use. And you just say, yep, it's fundamentally the open source thing, but let me change a few things to tweak it for the people who spend money.
I like that. So Samir, you want
to that's a very interesting point. I was just reflecting on the response that Alex provided on that question. Like, I'm, kind of trying to think going back to, again, the Rackspace days when we launched the OpenStack, and it became very popular when it was launched. But reflecting to what Alex was saying, the 5 stages of technology and how you go from open stage is the first step in the process, right? Or open source. And then you go to hybridizing it and privatizing it and commercializing it and all of those steps. So it's kind of interesting where he really took that 5 stages to heart in Ververica, and where the journey is in Ververica. They started with this Apache Flink open source, and now you're taking it to based on needs of the customer versus what is table stake from a technology standpoint. I really like that approach.
And because you mentioned OpenStack, we all know what Rackspace did at some point. And I remember at that time, 2010, 11, 12, I was working with VMware, for VMware later, and I was in that era of the hypervisor war. VMware versus Hyper-V versus KVM versus whatever. And who won? The cloud provider. It's VHS, Betamax, Video 2000 as video things. Who won? Netflix. Things get changed all the time. So I'm not saying do not start with Apache Flink because something else may win, but the point I'm trying to make is the whole world around us is evolving. And
evolving, yeah.
Something comes up. Certain things were phenomenal about OpenStack, others weren't. Take the best, continue, and I think we'll do the same. And I think for us as a company, because we talked about innovation in one of your questions, it's about seeing these movements and adapting to it so that we can continue to innovate. And yes, we'll keep investing in Flink, but in all honesty, there are other open source projects I like a lot at the moment, and I think we have to focus on those. Bring them back into the product eventually to keep innovating. Because Flink still will have a lot of innovation, but in all honesty, Flink is very mature now. And it's not ending, it's not dying. There will be Flink 2.0, et cetera. But it's going to follow a different market dynamic around us. Because according to Gartner, it's about an $800 billion market, mainly in US and Europe. plus obviously parts of China. There's a lot of money to be made in that area, and who doesn't want to be the next CEO of $100 million company?
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we're
Partner,
far away from it,
yeah,
but
yeah.
well,
Partner knows best. Yeah.
Yeah.
but I
So
wouldn't
yeah,
mind having that against my title, and then we speak again in a couple of years, and you introduce me as that, and not the transformational bullshit
yeah,
bingo player.
yeah, exactly.
No, that's good. I like
Nice.
the vision, and I like the approach, right? Because I think, how do you pair in not one but several open source technologies together to continue to meet the evolving need of the customer? That's kind of the main message here. So one last question. I know we were on top of time, so we want to be respectful of your time as well. What can you share with our listeners that you have never shared on any other podcast before?
And I'll put, if you can't come up with something crazy, maybe share some advice too. You know what I mean? Because I think a lot of people come up with some crazy stuff, but if you want to have a route for this, a lot of it is, if you're
Well,
speaking to somebody young or somebody, give them advice. Like just,
well, I mentioned it earlier, like my scuba diving thing. So I was 27 when I did it. And the crazy bit was, because we also touched on my parents lining me up for an internship.
mhm.
My parents were so embarrassed by it that they told everyone I'm doing an internship at a bank in Sydney, in Australia. So my advice, and answering part of that secret thing, is care less about what others think sometimes.
Love
Care
that.
about what is
Love
best
it.
for you.
Yeah.
Follow your feelings. At
Yeah, I
that
love it.
day and age and point, I probably wouldn't have been able to put it in words, but I needed the experience of breaking free, doing something I felt I wanted to do.
Yeah.
And luckily enough, was financially able to do it, because it's the big
Yeah.
but for many people. But if you have that ability, do it. Do something crazy, see what happens, and don't care too much about the others all the time. Care about yourself, because ultimately you have to live the next 50 years of your professional career with you.
Yeah.
Every morning you
It's
wake up and you look in the mirror, it's you.
what a concept.
And then you should be happy with yourself, and everything else will probably fall into place.
Yeah.
And then it becomes a matter of, because you touched on mentors and all of these topics, finding a few people around you. Don't always believe everything, but take it in and reflect it. And then it becomes a game of being at the right place at the right time. Because I'll tell you the one secret, I would not be MD of this company if I wouldn't have been here. I started in sales and partner management. Then I became MD. So sometimes take a step back in your career potentially, if it's a place you believe in, if you believe in the whole thing going forward. It doesn't mean pay cut or anything, because I'm not really making more now as I did in sales, because often salespeople make more than managing directors. But it's about take a risk and know where you kind of want to go, and then things will just happen typically. At least that was for me in the last 20 years, my
I love it.
experience.
I love it.
I
I don't
love
think
it.
it's
That's
more
great
profound than that.
advice, and great yeah, great
Yeah.
kind of
And
great
so,
response from sorry, go ahead, Jeremy.
no, I was going to say, I mean, this has been fantastic. And I think this is really the end of our show. And, I think this is a great way to cap it off. We always want to make sure, because we have young listeners who are trying to figure out their path. And so I think this is a great advice to give them.
Hopefully.
I agree. Very good.
Yes. Well, this has been fantastic. Thank you again, Alex. It's been great. And like I said, if you got something big coming up, or if you want to come back and something crazy has changed and you decided to go move to Sri Lanka and become a yoga instructor or something, do
Well, I
something
think the
crazy,
biggest
let us
thing,
know.
yeah, the biggest thing we have coming up is a thing called Flink Forward. It's an event
Okay.
where all of the Flink people can meet. So people,
Oh,
please
cool.
look up the website, Google it,
Very nice.
flink-forward.org.
Okay.
It's for the community. It's sponsored by us. And crazy things I'm married, I have 2 kids. It's limiting my options.
Yeah, exactly.
No more yoga instructions.
Yoga instructor in Sri Lanka is not going to happen anytime soon. So I get it. That's
Yeah,
cool.
no, that's great.
Well, thank you again, Samir. Always good to see you too. And then, Alex, this has
Thanks
been
for having me.
fantastic. And
Thank you.
please keep the recommendations coming. We always have some amazing guests that just, show up on the show. And then we've been proud to be doing this for over 7 years. So thank you guys again, and we'll see you later.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.